January 1944. The wind cuts across the flat Illinois prairie, sharp and unbroken, carrying the smell of coal smoke and machine oil. Snow clings to the edges of railroad tracks as a long, dark train slows to a halt. Steel wheels scream briefly, then fall silent. German prisoners of war step down onto frozen gravel. Most are young. Some wear patched field coats from North Africa. Others still carry the rigid posture drilled into them by years of military discipline. Barbed wire waits nearby, orderly and precise. American guards stand quietly, rifles slung low, watching without hostility. But it is not the fences that draw the prisoners' eyes. Beyond the camp perimeter, factory sirens sound. Great brick buildings loom in the distance, their windows glowing even in daylight. Inside, assembly lines move without pause. Cranes swing overhead, and standing at control panels, supervising crews, adjusting machinery with practiced hands, are women. Not secretaries, not nurses. Women in coveralls. Women in authority. For many of the German prisoners, this sight is more unsettling than captivity itself. It contradicts everything they had been taught about power, labor, and society. And as the factory whistles echo across the snow-covered fields, a quiet realization begins to take shape. This war is not only being fought on distant battlefields, but inside the very structure of nations. That realization did not arrive suddenly. It was shaped by events unfolding far beyond Illinois. By the time these German prisoners arrived in Illinois, the Second World War had entered its most demanding phase. In 1943, Allied forces had captured hundreds of thousands of Axis soldiers across North Africa, Italy, and later, Western Europe. The United States, separated from the front lines by an ocean, faced a logistical challenge unlike any in its history. What to do with the prisoners? Under the Geneva Convention, captured soldiers were to be housed, fed, and protected. The United States chose to transport many of them thousands of miles inland, far from coasts and borders. Between 1942 and 1946, more than 370,000 German prisoners of war were held in American camps. Over 500 camps were constructed across the country. Illinois became one of the key destinations. The reasons were practical. Illinois sat at the heart of the American rail network. It was close to farmland, factories, and industrial infrastructure critical to the war effort. Camps were established near towns like Joliet, Belleville, Rockford, and along key transport corridors. The prisoners lived behind fences, but not in isolation. They could hear the rhythms of American production every day. At the same time, the United States was facing a crisis of manpower. Millions of American men had been drafted or volunteered for service overseas. Farms lacked hands. Factories lacked skilled labor. Railroads, steel mills, and munitions. Plants faced shortages that threatened to slow the war effort. The solution did not come from abroad. It came from within American society itself, and it would soon challenge everything the German prisoners believed about strength and hierarchy. As American men left for Europe and the Pacific, women stepped into roles once considered unthinkable. By 1944, more than 6 million American women had entered the industrial workforce. They were no longer confined to clerical work or textile mills. They operated lathes, assembled aircraft engines, supervised shift rotations, and inspected artillery shells. Illinois stood at the center of this transformation. Chicago and its surrounding industrial zones produced steel, rail equipment, engines, and precision tools. Downstate plants supplied munitions and machinery. These factories did not merely employ women, they depended on them. Many women rose quickly into supervisory and technical positions due to skill, reliability, and necessity. This reality stood in direct contrast to the ideology that German prisoners had grown up under. Nazi doctrine emphasized rigid gender roles. Women were idealized as mothers and homemakers, removed from political and industrial authority. While German women worked during the war, especially later years, propaganda never celebrated female industrial leadership. Authority remained masculine. Technical mastery was framed as male. So when German posts in Illinois saw women issuing instructions, calibrating machines, and managing production quotas, the shock was profound. This was not a staged display. It was daily life. and it unfolded in full view of the prisoners as they worked nearby farms, unloaded supplies, or simply listened to factory whistles marking shift changes. What began as confusion soon became something deeper, a slow, uncomfortable For many German prisoners, captivity in America was already disorienting. They were fed adequately. They were not beaten. Some were allowed to work, earn small wages, and interact under supervision. This humane treatment conflicted with what they had been told about their enemy, but nothing challenged them more quietly than observation. Camp reports and post-war interviews revealed that German POWs frequently discussed American women among themselves. They spoke of women driving trucks, managing warehouses, and operating industrial equipment with confidence. Some expressed disbelief. Others reacted with discomfort or ridicule at first. Over time, those reactions shifted. The prisoners could not dismiss what they saw as propaganda. It was too consistent. Women were not temporary replacements fumbling through tasks. They were competent, they were efficient, and they were respected by their peers. This forced a psychological confrontation. If women could hold authority here, what did that say about the society that allowed it? And what did it say about the society they had left behind? The answers did not come through debate. They arrived slowly, through repetition, through routine, through the undeniable rhythm of production lines that never slowed. And those production lines pointed to something larger. American factories during the war were not only engines of steel and ammunition. They were demonstrations of national adaptability. Efficiency mattered more than tradition. Output mattered more than ideology. Women filled roles because they could. They advanced because they proved capable. In the logic of wartime production, performance outweighed prejudice. German POWs, trained to think in terms of rigid hierarchy, began to recognize this flexibility as a form of strength. The American war effort did not rely solely on discipline or fear. It relied on inclusion and pragmatism. U.S. Army intelligence later noted that exposure to American civilian life, including women in leadership, had a measurable effect on prisoner attitudes. Some returned to Germany less receptive to authoritarian structures. Others carried quiet doubts about the ideology they once accepted without question. No speeches were made. No re-education sessions were required. The lesson was visible every day, and it became clearest at moments when production pressure peaked. In mid-1944, as Allied forces pushed through France, American factories surged to meet unprecedented demand. Overtime shifts became routine. Production targets rose weekly. In Illinois, factories operated around the clock. German POWs assigned to agricultural or logistical labor near these facilities witnessed the intensity firsthand. They saw women managing double shifts, resolving mechanical failures, and enforcing quality standards with authority. God reports noted a change. Prisoners asked fewer ideological questions. They observed more quietly. Some requested English lessons. Others began asking about American civilian life after the war. This was the turning point. Not dramatic, not loud, but decisive. The prisoners realized that American strength did not come only from tanks and aircraft. It came from a society willing to mobilize every capable citizen, regardless of gender, when survival demanded it. That realization could not be undone. For soldiers raised on rigid doctrines, the impact was the sight of women directing production lines contradicted years of conditioning. It introduced doubt where certainty once lived. The collapse was internal, quiet, permanent. As the war drew closer to its end, many German POWs understood that defeat was not merely military. It was structural. Their enemy's resilience was rooted in social flexibility, not fear. And when the fighting stopped, that understanding followed them home. After Germany's surrender in May 1945, German POWs were gradually they returned to a country in ruined, cities flattened, industries destroyed, social order shattered. American intelligence debriefings recorded that many former prisoners spoke positively of their treatment. Some specifically mentioned American women's industrial roles as unexpected and impressive. These impressions did not immediately transform post-war Germany, but they planted seeds. As Germany rebuilt, women once again entered factories, offices, and administrative roles out of necessity. The memory of Illinois factories quiet, efficient, inclusive lingered. In the United States, many women were pushed out of industrial jobs after the war as men returned home. The factories changed again, but the precedent remained. Women had proven themselves under the most demanding conditions imaginable. For the German POWs who had witnessed it, the experience reshaped how they understood power and capability. It showed that ideology could be challenged, not by argument, but by example, and that example had unfolded far from the battlefield. War is often remembered through explosions and ruins, through generals and surrender documents. But history also turns quietly, in places rarely photographed. In Illinois, behind barbed wire and factory walls, a different battle unfolded. It was not fought with rifles or tanks. It was fought with time cards, blueprints, and production quotas. German prisoners arrived expecting to observe an enemy society weakened by war. Instead, they witnessed adaptation. They saw women carrying industrial responsibility with confidence and authority. They saw a nation reorganize itself without hesitation. Those sights challenged assumptions that years of propaganda had built. They revealed that strength is not fixed. It evolves. It responds. It includes. Long after the factories fell silent and the camps were dismantled, the memory remained not of the fiat, but of realization that the outcome of the war was shaped not only by armies in Europe, but by women in Illinois, standing at machines, proving every day that the foundations of power are broader than any ideology dares to admit. And in that quiet understanding, history left one of its most enduring lessons.